All right, so in order to calculate our measures of spread, we want to calculate our range, quartile 1, quartile 2, quartile 3, and finally the interquartile range. So our range is simply our min minus our max. And looking at our data on the previous page, that's 1,000 was the highest estimate, and the lowest estimate was 275, which generates a range of 775 people at the game. Now, in order to calculate our quartiles, we have 20 estimates. I note that that is an even number. All right, so to figure out where our median value is going to be, I take my 20 divided by 2. That gives me a 10. So our median value is between 10 and 11. So if I go back to my my chart and calculate what and see what was the estimate for the 10th value and the 11th value on my chart, this is my 10th value here. The estimate was 600. The 11th value is an estimate of 625. So my median value is going to be the average of 600 and 625. So it's going to be 600 plus 625 over 2, or 612.5. This is my median value. Which quartile does the median value represent? Quartile 2. So I personally find it easier to calculate my quartile 2 instead of, although the question asks for range Q1, Q2, Q3, I find it easier to calculate my Q2 first because it's just the median value. Okay. Once I know that middle point, I know my middle point was it was in between the 10th and 11th value. That tells me my first half of data. I can now figure out half of my first half of data. So my quartile 1 has got a total of 10 data points. I divide that by 2, and that gives me a 5. Again, 10 is an even number, which means I've got 1 through 5 is the bottom half, and then 6 through 10 is the top half. So I've got to choose between 5 and 6. Going back to my chart, I can find the 5th estimate. The 5th estimate is here, which was a 500, and the 6th estimate is 550. So I'm talking about 500 plus 550 over 2, or that's 500 plus 550, sorry, which generates 525. So if I were to estimate, if someone estimated 525 people at the game, that represents the first quartile of the data. It's greater than 1/4 of the estimates that were made. And finally, our quartile 3 is, again, there's 10 data points in the second half, which means I'm going to be looking between the 15th and 16th estimates. My 15th estimate from my data was a 700. My 16th and 17th estimate were 750. So estimate number 15 is 700. Estimate number 16 is 750. So 700 and 750. $725. So that represents my Q3. Any questions so far? And then I've got my interquartile range. And that's what that's used for is to calculate. We're looking at 50% of our data. And the question is, well, which 50% of the data might be most interesting for statisticians? If we're trying to make a decision about something, do we try to base our information on that top high flyer, the person that's guessing the highest data, the highest number of people at the event? Do we guess based on the person that's guessed the fewer number of people at the event? Who do we kind of believe? What might be of more value to us? So if we were to say, well, let's just take 50% of the answers and we'll center it around this, the middle 50%. Right? So that's sort of what that interquartile range is. So depending upon what it is that what we're doing with our analysis or what we're trying to do, we need to look at the data and try to read information from it. It's probably not a great idea to base your information on the lowest value that was presented, nor on the highest value, right? So there's probably going to be more valuable information within that middle section. So the interquartile range is simply known as Q3 minus Q1. Q3 is 725. Q1 is 525. Is 200. So 50% of the estimates were within 200 people at the game. That's what that's showing. And now finally, we're asked to draw a box and whisker plot. So really what we need to do for our box and whisker plot, there's 5 data points that we need. The 5 data points are our lowest value, our quartile 1, our quartile 2, or our median value, our quartile 3, quartile 3, and then finally our maximum value. Those are the 5 data points that we're going to plot on our box and whisker plot. So 225, we said, 275 is the lowest. That's 250. 270, I'm going to go up to 1,000 was my highest. Quartile 1 was 525. Quartile 3 was 725. And then our median or quartile 2 was 612.5. 650, 625, around there. So our box and whisker plot will look something like so. This is our min. You don't need to label this. I'm putting this here in case some people are not sure or can't remember what the various data points represent. When you're being assessed, you need to understand what those are. You just look at them and understand it. Questions on the box and whisker plot? Okay, so now we're going to go on to find the values of the 90th percentile. So the 90th percentile, we take our number of data points and we multiply it by 90%, right? We have 20 estimates. Multiplied by 90% is 0.9, and that generates the 18th value would represent the 90th percentile. And then when I go back to my data and look at what the estimate was of the 18th highest guess was 800. So 800, oops. You can say that the 18th estimate is at the 90th percentile. And is 800 people at the game. So an estimate of 800 is greater than 90% of the estimates that were made. I'll end that video.